Good evening. Welcome to the North College Hill Charter Review Commission meeting. Today is Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. And we are here just kind of taking a look at, I hope everyone had a chance to kind of review the charter to make whatever recommendations that they wanted to make. So I know that Ms. Curitan gave us her suggestions. Did you give us all of your suggestions?
Hi, no, I did not actually. We were pressed for time. And before we even get into that section, good evening, everyone. Hope you had a good day. I wanted to just go over just a few administrative things that I think I want us to kind of be all on the same page regarding. One is...
Erica, do you want to, open up with a prayer?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you.
Father God, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We also trust in your guidance. Please give us the spirit, and please help us to make good decisions for the city of North College Hill. Please lead us and order our steps so that we make the best decisions for our city and the citizens who live in our city. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you for that, Rachel.
Thank you.
Always got to start off in prayer. And in that same intimate sentiments of your prayer, Ms. Underwood, we are pressed for time. I did share this with Rachel. And then as you were walking in, Ms. Underwood, we're pressed and crunched for time. I would recommend, if it's okay with everyone, that we would increase our frequency or, and I'm going to say no to the or, because you do have another commitment right after this one. So as it stands right now, Ms. Underwood, you can correct me if I'm incorrect. We only have 3 weeks or 3 hours left if we keep at our current pace. If we continue with that pace, I don't feel like we're giving the citizens of North College Hill due justice, as we started late and now we're trying to press so much into just 3 hours. So my recommendation would be that we would increase our frequency to weekly so that we can really make sure that we're not omitting any key areas that would impact the citizens for the next 5 years, and or an alternative which the committee could recommend. So if we can have that discussion before moving forward.
Well, I agree that we are definitely crunched for time. But before we add more meetings, because I'm not a fan of have meetings just because for the sake of having meetings, I would just like to get feedback from everyone about, if they reviewed the charter, if they have recommendations, and then if everybody's reviewed the charter and everybody has recommendations, then we kind of go from there. Because what I also need everybody to keep in mind is that this has to be a ballot initiative. So whatever recommendations that we make, we send those recommendations to council. Council has to approve the recommendations. And then from there, those they would be in the form of a ballot initiative. So we want to be mindful that whatever goes on the ballot is something that we have to pay for as a city, and we want to be good stewards on behalf of the citizens. So we don't want to try to rewrite the charter, but we do want to address those things in the charter that are not working for us. So that's why I asked everybody to just kind of look through the charter to see if there was something specific. And I know that there had been a lot of talk about the section that Ms. Curitan had recommended with the city administrator being selected with the advice and consent of council. So that was something that had been kind of bandied about and discussed. So I just wanted to see, like, if we could just make a list and see, and then just kind of go from there
Let me-
before we agree to meet, add more meetings.
Sure. Let me also clarify that statement. So we are part of the Charter Review Committee. However, we speak on behalf of 10,000 citizens of North College Hill. And so I've actually received feedback from those citizens. And I think it's important that the citizens understand that it's not just us who are being impacted, it is them as well. And I want their suggestions to also be able to be reviewed and considered, not necessarily always implemented, but at least considered and discussed. And so, in fact, what you made reference of just a moment ago regarding the city administrator, I actually have more information relative to it, along with a few other
Let's get
areas. So
into
let me
it,
just clarify.
because I think that we're wasting
Yeah, we
time
are.
right now.
Yeah,
So
we
let's get into your recommendations.
Ms. Underwood, if I could.
Yes.
Well, I believe hers may be a little bit longer than mine. I do have two right off the top, so.
Okay, sure.
One of mine, I know we discussed or just briefly mentioned as far as the law director, but looking over the current charter as it reads now, if we're not going to put this as an elected position, we need to remove the portion of the last sentence, which reads, "This amendment shall take effect upon the completion of the currently elected law director's term of office or upon his," says his, but it should say his, her resignation, whichever occurs first. Currently, we don't have an elected law director. So
Right.
if we are not going to put it as an elected position, that statement needs to be removed or critiqued.
Okay.
Additionally, another area, I need to find it in here really quickly, I do apologize, which was the finance manager. I am suggesting that we change that to finance director because of the duties. The manager typically just like oversees a department, whereas the director is responsible for reports and numbers and so forth, which is currently what our finance manager does now. So I'm suggesting that we look at this and change this to a finance director, not manager.
Okay.
Are you also making a recommendation that the requirements as it states in the charter are modified or just the title?
We would have to modify some of them because I do recall at your last meeting there, if this committee so chooses to add some of the things that were mentioned to specify what is required from that position, such, I'll just throw out one. Ms. Underwood did mention something about the Hinkle report, if you wanted to include some of those things, so.
So as it states, it says that this person, as manager, will serve as the Department of Finance. Are you recommending that this person, he or she, would not be the department head?
That's not what I'm recommending.
Okay. Then who would you recommend if she's
The
going to be
finance director would be the department head, just as the public works director is the department head, the recreation director is the department head. So it would be, they would be the director of that.
And would this person also be a people leader, meaning they would have a team of people, or would they solely, as I think I heard you say, be responsible for reporting?
I said reports. If I did say reporting,
Okay.
that's what I meant. Currently, that position, as it operates now, operates as a manager, but we expect it to do director duties.
Okay.
So you're just making a recommendation for the title to change in retrospect to the duties that are rendered to the
The
city?
duties that we are asking the position to take on.
I would actually agree with that. I will also make reference, I have a few of those notes too, that if that is true, then I would make a recommendation that we require a graduate level of understanding and education, particularly an MBA in finance and or accounting. I think that would be essential.
I think if we, although not that I disagree with you, but I do also understand that when you require that, it's going to require the pay that goes with it. So, which is nothing that we're responsible for, that's council. So when you ask for those type of credentials, you have to be willing to pay.
I think if you're going to be a director, you're leading the finances of the city. If I'm hearing you correctly, you're stating that this person is currently doing the job of a director at a managerial level. If that is the case, then I would say that the education should also be that of a director level. I mean, that of an MBA in finance, in accounting, or even organizational leadership. I think something that correlates back to their leadership role would be essential if they're going to be the department head, director. Any kind of additional certifications, that being a certified, an accountant, or just something beyond just having their bachelor's degree.
Okay, and again, what I'm asking for at this point is just a list. And so I want us to be mindful that we're creating the list. I definitely want to go back and flesh out the list once we have that list, because remember, this has to go on a ballot. So we need to be selective about what we put on the ballot and how it's put on the ballot, the recommendation that we make to council, that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to get us to create the list. So finance manager to finance director, and modified duties, modify qualifications, potentially law director, remove last sentence regarding being elected position. So I'm just trying to flesh out this list at this point.
And I have one other. I'm
Oh, okay,
sorry.
sure.
The charter as it reads right now is very vague as it pertains to the president of council. There is a lot of, in my opinion, misconception about what that role does. The charter does not line out exactly what it does. From my knowledge, the president of council has served as the vice mayor, per se. I don't see that in writing unless I missed it somewhere.
It's not in our charter, but it is in other charters
Right.
that I've taken a look at.
And there's also, there is this unspoken that the president of council is responsible for council as it pertains to issues, discipline, so forth. But our charter reads otherwise. It says that council, in fact, takes care of its own discipline. So if that's something that we want to revisit, president of council, maybe the duties, maybe others might think that it's fine the way it is.
Okay.
I also agree with that. Surprisingly, though, I think it might cause a little bit of conflict of interest if we rewrite that at this point in time. Primarily, if we consider looking at that, I would also say that we would even remove the quote-unquote president of council and potentially have someone who has the highest number of votes, who maybe is on the ballot for the 2025 election. That person would automatically step into that role as being president of the council versus it being just a solely elected role. That's just something to consider with that as well.
So
That's how
you're
it's done.
suggesting that we omit or discontinue with the president of council?
Consider it
That's
for
what I said.
thought, food for thought. Yeah, food for thought.
I'm sorry, I did say suggest, I'm sorry.
All good. Also, I wanted to make reference that the past two meetings, we've also had suggestions and recommendations. I just wanted to clarify at what point in time, because like I mentioned, there are citizens who are unable to be present, who would love to give their recommendations. At what point in time will we go through these items that have been suggested from the mayor, from others, from myself, and consider what we would really want to present so that way we don't have to revisit it a second, third, and fourth time?
Well, we have to create the list first. I want us to get through the list. So I want us to create the list, and then, like, this is the list of things we want to address, because we know we can't rewrite the charter.
Understood.
We know we can't do that, but I do want us to focus on those things that we've kind of taken a look at and reviewed. So I think we're all kind of on the same page, like the law director, the finance manager / director, and the city administrator. So those are, I have my suggestions actually all relate to those roles, but I'm just trying to get a list. A part of the reason why I don't want us to just add infinite meetings, is because I don't want us to, I want us to be
Efficient.
focused, right, efficient. That's a great word. So it forces you to be efficient when you have only an hour to get it done. And I know that we can do this.
Yeah. My only reservation with that is that sometimes we're missing key partners a part of this committee, and I understand everyone has their own timing of what they have going on. I just feel like it would be an injustice to the citizens that we started almost.
Still talking about the injustice to the citizens, but, we are all appointed. The citizens speak through their elections. They elect officials to kind of handle, they elect the mayor, you elect your city council members.
That's not what I'm referencing.
I understand that, but I just want to get a list together. Let's get the list done, and then we'll go back. And if we need to flesh it out and have more meetings, I'm happy to do that, but we can't get a list together if we're spending 10 minutes talking about the citizens. Nobody's sent me an email, nobody's called me.
I actually sent you an email. So if we can, I don't want this is not council. This is not anything directly related to that. This is volunteer, and I want us to not lose focus. And in fact, I sent an email to a couple of people here tonight. I also want to make sure that when we spoke at our very first meeting, February the 26th, those were suggestions that were made. And at our last meeting, March the 12th, those suggestions were made. I don't want us to start on a new topic if we have not fully addressed those old topics that we discussed and agreed that we would do. At the February 26th meeting, we said that we would do that. If we want to modify
We're going
and pivot.
to discuss every topic. We're going to discuss all of the issues. We have to. That's what we are tasked to do. However, I don't even know what we need to discuss. Like, if I have a list and I know, like, okay, now we need to kind of figure out what we want to focus on, or, because again, all of these things would need to go on the ballot. And I have, a sample of the last time it was on the ballot, sample ballot language. And it was, kind of a very short paragraph. I have a copy of the report that the last time they did the charter review.
Do you recall me asking a couple of weeks ago for those modifications over the years? No pressure, I understand.
There's only been one.
Right. So in 2020 we had made modifications. 2015 at no particular time since 1980 when the charter started, we've made only 2 modifications.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I never got an email to confirm that, so that's good to know.
Okay, we're still working on the list.
So for list, think it, like you said, the 8.0 law director in alignment, but my specific request is just for us to consider and discuss about some level of participation. I know it says removal, mayor and majority of council, but maybe adding another layer of having to be at so many meetings.
Okay.
So another layer of accountability. And then the only other one of far as discussion, I know you had talked about, I guess, the term limits of council and how sometimes we don't get enough people. And so just, again, I don't have any specific suggestions, but just for us, when we get to that point, be on the list of talking about term limits, if we want to have some caveat that if someone cannot, if they've reached their limit, but there aren't any other available candidates, but still have other available candidates first, but just as a safety net in case somebody else, we don't get enough people.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Those are the only 2 major ones that I have sections when we get to those.
All right. Okay.
Recommendations. I don't see that there are specific qualifications for the city administrator as there are for the law director and the finance director. So I think that needs to be fleshed out, what those specific qualification standards should be. And I think of it as being the CEO and COO running a multi-million-dollar business or project. So those qualifications should match accordingly. I also believe that When it comes to being a part of the charter review, I think it would be healthy for us in the future to have an independent lawyer, one who serves for the charter but does not serve at the leisure of council and or the mayor. Just an independent person who absolutely has nothing to gain or lose being on the Charter Review Commission. I also want to make the recommendation that I know that our mayor is part-time, and I think that some of the duties and responsibilities of a part-time mayor in other cities, that person as a part-time mayor is just serving in a ceremonial official head. More so, that city manager or that city administrator is the person who runs the city. The way that our charter is set up, we have it that the mayor is the CEO and the city administrator is the COO. I don't know how a part-time mayor can be the CEO over a multi-million-dollar project. So something to consider, how that dual partnership of power needs to be reviewed. Okay. And I looked thoroughly and I didn't see it. I see no job description or requirements for Public Works Director in our charter at all. Nothing.
A job description would be in the charter.
Let me clarify that. So a department head is a director. We have a finance director. This person works for the city. A Public Works is not even mentioned. Did anyone else see that? If you saw it, let me know. But I didn't see anywhere in our charter that Public Works is mentioned. And so I would love for that to be something that is considered as an add-on. And let me not use the word job description, but a duties and a responsibility similar to that of the finance manager. As it is, I think also the recreation director is mentioned here in the city charter. Are you catching me? If I'm going too fast, let me know.
Yeah, you're fine. Go
Okay,
ahead.
great. I think that it'll be two things that will be healthy for our city going forward is the mayor, again, serves as a ceremonial, I don't want to use this word, but as a person who serves as the head of the city by deed more so. And so I think it would be healthy if the mayor, in partnership with the serving city administrator, would deliver an annual address to council and citizens annually, no less than 60 days, or actually no greater than no less than 60 days, because you have Christmas, it's November, Thanksgiving. So no less than 60 days after they are elected, this person would make recommendations and establish achievements and future goals for the city. I think this will give citizens an idea of what to look forward to in the future. I also would like to recommend that we have a few the word is executive session I have here, but a few add-ons for the duties of the mayor. And that would be that the mayor has the ability to call executive session. Last week I said special meeting, or 2 weeks ago I said special meeting. However, it was to be executive session. I don't think the charter references that, so I would love for that to be a part. Let's go back here, section 6.05, purchases and contracts, as it currently states. That anything above $75,000 needs to go to council. My recommendation, again, is that it's $50,000, but there needs to be a clause in here that states that a purchase cannot be broken down into two purchases for $25,000 or $24,999, and excluding the ability to go before council. That may be where our law director can weigh in some input, but we want to make sure that we have it that only $50,000 is this threshold. And again, that has to be under an emergency or a state bidding process. I actually also wanted to take out the clause, and this is section 6.05, where it says number 3, for better value or performance. I think even in those situations where better value or performance are weighed in, I think it should be only with an emergency and use of the state bidding process. where there's an exception for that accession or exceeding the 50,000. And I also would like to recommend that we, just a second, please. I wanted to make sure that we had it that prior to any votes, the mayor shall seek the advice of council regarding the city administrator's role in the city. Although he or she will serve as the CEO of the city, I think that it's important that there is a supermajority buy-in from council because they work hand in hand, making our city great. And so I think that it would need to be a supermajority for there to be approval for a city manager. And in that same vein, I think that if there is not a supermajority, then it would be on the mayor to find another candidate who meets the qualifications of that of a CEO running a city. And give me just a second here. What? Yes, ma'am.
That's 6.4.
Yes, ma'am. Another piece for the mayor, sorry, I feel like I got some hair. Another piece for the mayor is that I think it would be super helpful and beneficial as we begin to turn the corner and turn the page for our city, that a mayor, it's not uncommon for a mayor to meet other mayors in neighboring cities and to do so at a mayor's conference and training. I don't want to ever take it for granted that the things and duties and obligations serving a mayor, what a mayor will do to serve its citizens, its constituents is known. So I recommend that we have that as an add-on, that it's a mandatory requirement that the mayor attend a mayor's conference paid for by the citizens. And give me just one second here. In addition to, I think I mentioned the supermajority for the city administrator, I also wanted to say that in reference to, again, I don't think that we have it in our budget. Maybe we do, I don't know, to have a full-time mayor, but I really want us to consider making that switcheroo. Where the mayor serves the ceremonial and that the CEO of the city or COO in that essence would be whom they partner with, that being the city manager or administrator. Section 10.3, I believe that's regarding the, let me give you the exact title. Recreation. I think that should actually read Parks and Recreation. I think there might be a little bit of a disconnect in what that person actually does and serves our city and with capacity. So I think it would be helpful that it becomes just not a sole person, but a Parks and Recreation board working to make our city a whole lot better. And then one more. And if I need to review anything, let me know. And I think the mayor, you mentioned that I was surprised it was in there, section 8.1. It references the law director as being an elected official. That's not true, so make sure we get rid of that. I also had that in my notes. And last one for now. The tree board serves in section 10.1 of our city. I think that should be considered an official commission and a board. We have some phenomenal volunteers who have worked diligently over the years, and I think it would be super helpful if we go ahead and make that an official board for our city. And that's all that I have. I may have some more, but that's all I have for right now.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything else?
I think that's the whole charter.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much kind of that's it is. It just kind of touches on the major things. So I think now what we need to do is go back and kind of flesh those things out that we have made into our list. So the only thing, my contributions or what I had suggested was requiring the finance director or finance manager to attend at least one city council meeting and provide a report, which would make sense if that person were a director, I guess, I don't know. But I think just at least coming to one meeting and giving a report to council, as well as, so that was and then I had just some of the same things that I heard from other people. I had those same kind of suggestions. So I guess what we can do is let's start with the city administrator. Let's talk about that in a little bit more detail.
Are you suggesting rather that we go through the recommendations? Because there's three days worth from 26th to 12th and 26th.
Right, so I think that at this point, we should kind of talk about them, talk about what the recommendations were. So I know that it was recommended that instead of the city administrator be selected with the advice of council, it would be changed to the advice and consent of council. So I think we definitely need to talk about that.
It was actually the advice and supermajority of council. So just to be a little bit more specific, because a supermajority is a number, and I think that's 5 out of the 7. Is that correct?
Right, yeah, which is, so I think we should talk about that. And then also talk about, so that's how the person is selected, is what we're, suggesting that it be changed. And then also qualifications, I want us to flesh that out as well. And let's see what else I have here. That's kind of an overview. Am I missing something? Like qualifications and how that person is selected. Am I missing something? I mean, that's a broad overview.
The only other thing was that purchasing portion of it, what they're allowed to spend, decreasing it from 75,000 to 50,000.
Okay.
Yep. And then
Is that under city administrator or is that under?
that
different-
is
okay.
under.
Under
so-
6.02,
It's actually
605.
Yeah, it is. However, I don't think anyone has the
No.
ability to spend funds without going to council. So
Right, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dieters. It says 75 now, but I believe council has the ability to write an ordinance reducing that to 50. Is that right, or am I wrong?
The 75 would be the ceiling, so you could always go lower than that by ordinance.
Okay, so, because I seem to remember that's happened in the past, where council passed an ordinance reducing the amount that the city administrator was allowed to spend. Is that,
Did a motion.
I know they're not supposed to do a motion, but
They did a motion
they did a motion. Okay,
through legislation.
So what I'm looking to do to make sure is that it's not something that's brought before council in a motion. I'm looking for it to be like, I don't want to say Bible, but more so our Constitution. Like, this is the rule. It sets a standard and it sets a precedent that this is what it says. And to answer your question, this does fall under Section 6, which is for the city administrator.
So, yeah. So could it be 50,000 up to 75,000?
So what I recommended is that it currently sits at 75,000. My recommendation was that it was lowered to 50,000, and that there was a clause in which I'm sure our law director, 2 attorneys here, would be able to clarify how we would write that so that we don't have two. And I don't think this would be the case. I think that everybody would go with the correct intention and the right pure heart to do this the right way. But it currently states that 75,000 is the threshold. However, I would recommend that that's lowered to 50,000. Also, in that same vein, in that number 2, it states that the city administrator shall report the facts. I wanted to have and findings. So, for example, if we've asked the city administrator to go out here and get quotes for all brand new chairs, go from leather to cloth, to get all of the facts and all of the findings, to present that to council, and that threshold in which, if there was an emergent situation, they would be able to utilize funds is $50,000. That's the recommendation in that. And so where I would need our law director to add additional clause that doesn't currently exist is a clause that states, and again, I hope this will never be the case here, but something would say, like, if we're going out to look for brand new chairs, let's just say we broke up the cost, right? Or broke up the quote, or broke up the bid, whatever you want to call it, to where it could allow a person to bypass council because it's $49,999 or something of that nature. Just don't want that to be. So that's where I would like to add that clause here.
Okay, so the last sentence does mention that council has the right by ordinance or resolution to further restrict or increase the amount of purchases or contracts that may be authorized without bidding, but no increased limit shall exceed 75. So we have this, because council is the, the administration has to go to council about money. So are we saying that even, I just kind of want to hear some kind of devil's advocate or something. I mean, why 50 instead of 75?
Yeah.
Like, that's,
Sure. So I don't,
why
sure,
50
absolutely.
and not 100? I
Sure,
don't know.
absolutely, absolutely. So first thing, don't forget that it does state that if there's ever an emergency, that you don't have to. That's number 1. That says that he or she can bypass coming before council if there's ever an emergency, or if there is the use of the state bidding process. But if the state bidding process and/or it's not an emergency, is not used, let's just say we want to go in and upgrade. I'm looking at a fire extinguisher. We want to add all brand new fire extinguishers here. That should go before council. And I think that we've had over the years questionable, from whatever reason, whether valid or invalid, it just really helps to aid in the transparency for our city. Potentially, once there is a greater level, I could have said 10,000. I could have said 100. I'm just thinking of ways that we can better create a level of transparency for citizens. I think that also, don't forget though, it says that if there is ever an emergency and or the state bidding process is used, then he or she can bypass council, again, being the COO for the city. However, if this is a project that we're starting, we're looking to work on, I think it's efficient and wise to get the emergency clause to remain, and also for there to be use of the state bidding process.
Ms. Holder, the high revised code is, and last year they moved it to 75,000, and every calendar year thereafter it goes up by 3%. It used to be 50. So I think there was a recognition that 50,000 is not what it used to be.
Right.
And
Yeah, the value.
The other thing is, the mayor has the authority to sign contracts as long as it has been appropriated. So council actually appropriates it, but that anything above that $75,000 has to be competitively bid. So our current charter now is actually lower than what the state law is.
Right.
Because the state law goes up to try to recognize inflation. So I would recommend that you keep it at least at 75, if not change your law to be consistent with the charter, with the state law, to allow it to increase over time, because if not, we only do this every 4 or 5 years. And if that's the only thing that needs to be changed in a 5-year period, it may not be worth going to the voters on that. So if you let it to be flexible and let it move with the economy, I think that's probably a better way to do it.
Yeah, and I would, again, because 75,000 today is not 75,000 5 years from now. But I want to make sure that we consider the status that it currently states, that in the event of an emergency and our use of the state bidding
That's
process.
not the number, that's bidding.
Right. So we should never, ever, if we're looking at scenarios, we may not ever need to utilize the scenario of it being 50,000 or 75,000, because the process.
Almost always have that.
Because the process uses the state bidding process, is my point. I don't know if we're all reading the same document.
In a lot of cases, some cases it's over the 75,000.
That's my point.
Some cases
Yeah.
it's under.
That's my point. So if it's 1.5 million, 39, whatever that dollar amount is, if the state bidding process is used, we are good to go. However, if the state
What's
bidding
your
process,
rationale behind wanting it to be 50? Because you changed, you say it wanted to be 50.
well, didn't you just mention that it formerly was?
Well, a long time ago.
That's correct. So we can say 60, we can say, I think that sometimes the citizens have expressed that they just want better transparency. And I think that the citizens, I am one, but there are 9,999 others out there.
Also, when you do competitively bidding, you got to take the lowest, the most responsible bidder.
That's
Maybe-
correct.
Maybe not the best at the.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct.
It's not always in your best interest to competitively bid. Sometimes it's better to be able to go with, to get quotes and go with the contractor or vendor you think is the best fit for your needs.
And how is that determined? Who's best fit?
Well, it's not always done through competitive bidding. Sometimes
Right.
it's done through other ways.
But what other ways, if competitive bidding is not utilized, what are the other ways determined that are,
Maybe we already have some of the, like, let's say we're purchasing a piece of equipment.
can you talk into the mic?
Maybe we're purchasing a piece of equipment for the police department, and we need 3 more of this item. We already have 7 of them. We want them to be able to coordinate or to coordinate with what we already have. Maybe we have a past relationship with a particular vendor who's done a very good job with the city and maintenance or responses, and so it's not always competitive bidding.
Sure.
Is not always the best thing. It can be the best thing, but it's not always the best thing.
I also want to make reference that it's going before council, and these are people whom we've elected to run our city in a way that they make decisions in for us. So I would think I would be okay with going before my elected city officials to say, hey, I need 65,000 or I need whatever dollar amount there is. The point of this is to say that if it's over a certain dollar amount, if we don't want 50,000, whatever that dollar amount is, I don't think it should be 75. I think that ultimately the purpose of this is to say that it should go before council. That's really the gist of it. And I don't want there to ever be, I don't think anyone would intentionally do this, but my purpose in presenting this is to say, if we're spending big dollars, I think that the council members who serve our city, who are elected, should know about it, and B, have a weigh in.
Okay, but I think you're confusing something. This is just bidding.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. The only time it
It's
just says
not.
that if your threshold's over 75,000, you have to be competitively bid.
That's correct.
Right. So council could authorize, they might authorize in their budget that we need to buy something new at the fire department.
That's right. Yeah,
And it could be well over 75,000.
that's correct. It should come before council.
Can I finish? Please. I've been quiet and letting you talk, and every time I
Sure,
talk, you want to
sure,
jump in
sure.
before I even finish a sentence. So there might be a authorization in the city, in the annual budget to purchase something. It might be over 75,000. The city administrator would be required to competitively bid that, but that contract may never come back to council if council already appropriated the money up front. So you're confusing 2 different things. You're
I'm not.
confusing the competitive bidding process with council's authorization of spending. Those are 2 different things.
Yeah, Mr. Dieters, I do actually think that you serve in an advisory role in this process.
I was asked for my opinion
Yes,
by a
sir.
council person.
Sure, but in this particular role here, I do believe that you serve as an advisory role to make sure that all the legalities.
Advising you against making that
Right.
change. is what
So
I'm-
Okay,
you can.
we're getting off track again.
You are, definitely. Right.
Let's just, I want us to stay on track because I like that word efficient. I want us to be efficient.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we are debating kind of the $75,000 limit, pros and cons. Like that's what that's kind of what I'm listening for.
So-
So I'd like to,
If I could, Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
I think that it should stay at the $75,000 because in many instances, we've seen where it delays the process. So when you get a piece of legislation, and in all cases, whether it's through prior legislation, through passing of the the annual budget, council is aware. They know that this happens. So when you have, let's say if we have a project that is $55,000, so now we got to get a piece of legislation created. We have to get it before council, and it has to go 3 readings in most cases, which is what council likes. That's their preview. They want to read it for 3 readings. So now we put off a project
Plus, it has to go another 30 days after that.
after that, if it's not, right.
If it's not an emergency.
Right. Also, I wanted to make reference, if we didn't read it, it states that such facts and findings should be reported to the mayor and to council at its next meeting. The reason why, and I've been present and citizens have watched, that's not been the case. And so that
Wait,
might,
wait, wait, you're talking about something other than
Oh.
the 75,000.
I'm reading,
I'm asking you a question. Are you talking about something other than the 75,000?
I am not. I am reading bullet points 1, 2, and 3 in the same 6.05. A, if it's an emergency, it can be skipped. B, if it's, or number 2, use of the state bidding process or better value or performance. And in such case, the city administrator shall report the facts to the mayor and to the council at its next meeting. So all of this is all in relation to any kind of purchase or contract. Now, if you all feel, you all can feel this way, I don't. If you all feel that a person should be able to spend, however, without council's input or buy-in or weigh-in, that's how you all feel. I do not feel that way. I feel as if there should be, if citizens don't have the ability to have that discussion, I think that it should at least come from those who are elected by the citizens to say, we want to see the information, and over the past however many months or years, that has not been the standard at
Okay,
all.
What about adding language maybe that requires contracts to be given to the council?
Can you be more specific?
Can you repeat that
Elaborate.
again? Because I would just like to say that every dime that we've spent, we've brought it before council.
Right, well,
Any-
okay,
right.
we're
So-
just talking,
Yes.
we're just
Yeah.
talking, right? So
Just talking,
I
just
think
talking.
that, I think with, depending on the council, right? Because I was sort of like Ms. Curitan before I actually ran for council. I would go to every meeting and kind of take notes. I didn't talk, but I did kind of watch. And what can happen when council and the city administration are kind of very contentious and not getting along? It just turns into,
It heeds progress.
right, it just like nothing happens, nothing gets done. And what I will say about our current council, my colleagues usually want to hear 3 readings of everything. And, while that, it does give people an opportunity to catch up, at the same time, it still just kind of really slows things down doing that. So I'm just kind of wanting to kind of flesh out a way that, administration can be more efficient
And transparent.
and transparent
Yeah.
as well. Because I know that in the past, there was an administrator who maybe didn't share or didn't.
Right. History
turn
speaks
over
for
those,
itself.
Those contracts.
Yeah.
Our current administrator is very good at telling us everything. However, in the past, we didn't have that. So I just want to make sure that we're kind of, I honestly don't think the 75,000 is the issue. I think the issue is the knowing what's going on.
I would agree. Yep. So if we want to either table, if we want to, you okay? Oh, you want a cough drop? I have one. Are you okay? Okay. If we want to just take the dollar amount off, can we even word it? And again, I'm not an attorney. However, if there is any wording that we can modify that says any purchase, any contract, anything that is done, and then do we even want to say like, hey, let's get a new TV? Because I know that you all had to go, council had to approve spending like $1,000 for this very TV right here. So
Well, we didn't have to approve it, but
Appropriate
we
those
did,
funds, yeah.
but we did
Make a
ask,
motion.
we asked the
Had to ask for permission.
administration to purchase the TV because
oh, not the TV, the cords, the cords.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know
You may not have
anything
been here.
about the
It's okay.
cords.
Either way,
So-
let's just say it's not 75,000. Let's just say that there has to be just a greater level of transparency when it comes to that.
I think that's doable.
Yeah, I do
What
too.
does everybody else think?
As long as it doesn't, like you said, I think you alluded it before, it doesn't cause so much red tape that we can't get anything
Microphone.
done.
Right.
You know, because I understand and I appreciate trying to voice for the citizens, but at the same time, like.
We're all
like you said,
residents.
That, you know, we have elected officials and people who are appointed, and that at some level, at some point, have confidence in that, and not feel like we gotta run everything past everybody, because that's just gonna slow everything down. We're not gonna get anything done. So long as we're mindful of that, the balance of, yes, we need to look at something, and then also, we put so much red tape, we're not gonna be able to do anything,
That's
because
so
we wanna
true.
get approval and submit everything past everybody.
I think your language that tried to handle that, when I look at this, is, there's a little inconsistency because I don't think anyone realized that state law would change and continue to go up, but, it's put at 75,000, and then the idea is that if it's above that, you have to competitively bid it, and if it's also above that, even if you've competitively bid it, it requires you to to provide some reference to council as to what's happening, right? But council also, by the way, if you have a city administrator who you feel is not giving you information, at any time, you can lower that amount to force the city administrator to do that for you.
And I'm aware of
It kind
that,
of has that
right.
flexibility
They
built
know.
into it.
Right, I am aware of that. However, I think that transparency,
Right.
something about like, you know, just copies of contracts or copies of
Definitely.
purchases, just something like that, I think that would probably be appropriate.
Let me also just state
The
this.
question is, what's that amount? Because if you want contracts of everything that we purchase, every purchase order,
We
you-
wouldn't get
Sure.
anything done.
So all of it's already public record though, so
I
don't
didn't- I
forget
didn't
that,
mean-
right?
Right, I
Yeah,
don't
it's all
mean
public
like
record.
approval.
Right.
I just mean copies. That way we're
Well,
not,
yeah, but I think it already kind of says that if it's more than $75,000.
right, even if it's less though. I think that,
I guess that's the
that way,
question you have to ask yourself
right.
if you really want all that, because
Right.
that
I
would
think
be a
she's
lot.
answering it.
so I think at least if we know, like,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be a report or anything, just kind of a, hey, we bought $500 worth of new chairs, something.
Mm.
Just,
Don't you get a finance report?
it,
Have all that
that's
listed.
not included, no.
Not though. So Mr. Dieters, I kind of see what you're saying, but I kind of don't, because what you're assuming is that, isn't that already included in the finance report? It's not. In fact, sometimes when we want these details, it's like a public records request, and then you have to wait 60 to 90 days. It almost just is like if we just had have the information readily available, not to say, you know what, I disagree with you buying these chairs. It's just, I want to know at the end of the day where the tax dollars are going. So if we want to table this section of it and then talk about qualifications for the time we have remaining, if we want to just say, hey, you know what, let's just consider it a little bit, let's just,
I'd like you to ask, like, Arias, like, if you had to give every contract that was $500 or more,
this is not,
how to work with that.
but
being
Mr.
for your
Dieters,
office.
we have actually, thank you that Mr. Reyes-Duxine is here, but this is not like a dialogue with others in the
No, I
audience.
think that input's
It
pretty
gives
important.
us perspective, let's say,
Yeah.
so we know what the
Yeah.
volume is.
I mean,
if that's realistic.
we're running a major operation here.
Multi-million dollar.
Spending lots of money every day.
I think
so-
it would be a headache both ways. I think that you underestimate the level of the volume of work that goes with just conducting day-to-day business. To produce that, anything that people ask via public records or email, it has been produced by both myself and the finance department. And as far as I am aware, it has also been given in the past. I think it's just a simple ask. The charter gives enough latitude and autonomy for council and even citizens to ask for those things and obtain them right now. Nothing else needs to change about that. $75,000 is small potatoes. If you look at, even if you were following the monthly budget meetings and you saw the list of things that are there and the spendings, you can attribute it back to that. If you hone in on one specific purchase, you can say, hey, Miss Anderson, Miss Dukes-Dean, can I please have this? What is this? I think the latitude for you to have the answers to that is already there for both council and citizens. I think it's
actually,
redundant.
Yeah. I think
to-
it's different though, however, because I've been present and the information that I have requested and other citizens have requested, that I've actually stood at this microphone multiple times and have requested certain pieces of information, and I was told that I would get it as a public records request, which is a 60 to 90 day threshold, versus getting it in that actual time frame. In fact, there's a question that I asked January the 22nd that I'm still waiting for an answer on. So I don't want us to get sidetracked. I think that what we really want to flesh out and make sure we understand is that there's transparency, and as Ms. Underwood stated, that there should be an equal opportunity to receive copies, not to necessarily say I agree or disagree, but it should not be, hey, I'm asking for a copy of the green chairs and that purchase that was made. That should be readily available, not something that I have to request and wait 60 to 90 days to receive. To me, that just seems like, oh, I'm pulling teeth just to get bare bones minimum information. So I would recommend that if we don't want to talk about it being the dollar amount, I would then recommend, as Ms. Underwood has emphasized, that anything is made available as it already is made available to the public.
About made available, that's
Sure,
my question.
that's a
If you
great
want-
question.
If you're gonna put in the charter, the city administrator has to send to you every time. I mean,
No.
if we get a new transmission put in one of the police cars, do you want, like, the paperwork on that?
So
Like,
let me,
You know
let's
what I
clarify
mean? We
that.
gotta really
So
think
when
about
we,
what we're doing here.
sure. So let's talk about efficiency. That seems to be our word of the day. So when we talk about making something new, if we get a contract, so for example, we recently got some roof repairs done. Is that document scanned into our system currently? Because I think that the city currently is going to work with Iron Mountain to ensure that every piece of legislation, every document is scanned in. So thinking of efficiency, that document, once it's scanned in through Iron Mountain, should be made available quickly and accessibly for our city administrator, for our council per their request, for our mayor, whomever else. It shouldn't be a 60 to 90 day process. It should say, hey, John Doe is looking for a copy of the Iron Mountain Agreement. Here it is, John Doe. There you go. Within a matter of a few days.
Well, your
Those are
public
two different
records
systems.
You're talking, again, you're mixing a lot of things up.
My point is, let me clarify because I wasn't done.
Public records request is different than a council making requests through the mayor.
I understand, but what I'm saying to you is the reason why they run parallel with each other is because that's just been my personal experience. I want to know, my taxes are so high, and I love living here as a citizen, but I just want to know where all of our tax dollars are going. I think we're kind of getting a little bit too deep. My point is that I should be able to have easy access to know that my taxes, if they're paying for chairs, if they're paying for a roof, if they're paying for new police radars, whatever, however, whenever, whomever, it should be readily available, and it should not take 60 to 90 days for anyone to get a copy of a document for a purchase or an agreement or a contract.
Days, and I don't know where you're getting that, but that's fine. But if you buy
yeah.
chairs and someone came in and asked for a purchase order, I don't think it's going to take 60 or 90 days for a council person to get that.
April.
Okay,
okay.
so, again, I'm really big on respecting people's time. So now that I kind of see how the discussion is going, to kind of being fleshed out what we're talking about, I do agree that maybe for the month of April, we need to meet every week if everybody is amenable to that. Just again, 5:30 to 6:30. Is that something that everybody can do?
I can try. I may not be. It just depends on if my meetings get done in time.
There will be at least one, not more than one in April I will
But-
miss.
What?
Okay.
I know I got here late because I was on a mediation late, but
That's 5 meetings.
what?
That's what now?
What I think that probably. I mean,
talk to the
my
mic?
advice to you.
Can you talk to the mic?
My advice would be to start like at Title I and say, does anybody have any changes or is this good to go? Yep, no changes, good to go.
That's what I
Then you get to the next one. You want to talk for me?
Sure. I actually made that recommendation at the beginning of our meeting. However, we decided to pivot a different way.
And then if we have some discussion, you're the chair, you could say discussion's closed, and then you could take a vote. And so you could say, where are we? And if the people who are the voting members say, we're good at 75, or we want to change it to 50, the vote happens and move on to the next, that issue's done.
Okay,
So that's how I would recommend doing it.
okay, fair enough.
But Ms. Underwood,
The
you
only
also,
reason I didn't want to do it that way was because we're not really going to, I don't think we need to address every portion of the charter. I do think that I asked everybody to kind of, for homework, go through the charter and make recommendations. I think everybody did that. We have a list. We have a good working list. And I was just going to stick to that list, being mindful that this has to be a report given to council, and it would also have to make it onto the ballot, which I think that, you know, realistically speaking, we're not going to address every single section in the charter.
Well, right, but at least then, like, some of those things may be just really quick. Like, you know, Article 1 is form of government, and might be, if no one has any changes, okay, we're good, fine, move to the second one. And then some of them I think are gonna require a little more discussion. But then you could, once you believe discussion has kind of been had and people have been heard, you could just say, okay, at this time, I'm gonna close discussion, and there's a motion. And then someone can make a motion. If it's not seconded, it dies. If there's seconded, then you have a vote.
So thank you for your suggestions, Mr. Dieters, and I do respect you as being an attorney and as the vice chair of this committee. I think that at the end of the day, I want to make sure that our chair, Ms. Underwood, and myself, along with our committee, we utilize you for the advice. Now, and no, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but we actually live here. You work here. So it hits us a little bit differently than it might hit you. I just wanted, at the end of the day, that everybody has a chance to weigh in, whether we agree or disagree. And so that was part of the reason why we recommended that we would go weekly at an hour. And I also wanted to make mention that on the February the 26th meeting, we all stated that at that time, Elijah created the Google Drive for us and that we would make our recommendations in there. Does that still work for everyone utilizing that Google Drive?
Okay,
I mean, either or, but that's,
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't matter, but, let me just say this as well. Again, as you the chair, that it is yours, show to run, but I do want to say, I do agree with Mr. Dieters of, I would feel better if we went section by section and be able to say, section 01, we're good. So at least we feel like we're making progress. And we
Okay.
know that we're at page 10 and we got so many pages to go. And then as we get to those sections that there really is something, that's where conversations are gonna have to be had.
Right.
But also it creates an opportunity where we can say, we've already talked through sections 2, 3, 6. Those are closed. We're not gonna keep going backwards. So I think it just
Okay.
makes it a more efficient way to be able to know where we're at and be able to see the progress.
okay.
And Madam
one more
Chair, I
thing.
would agree with that as well if we start beginning, flip, so we don't
Didn't I
have
say at
to,
the beginning?
like she said.
All right, okay, we'll do it. It's
One more
done.
thing I just want to say real quick,
Okay.
Ms. Underwood. That was what I recommended, but everyone was
Yes,
thought.
you're right.
So, right. So it's,
You're
I
right,
find
you're
it
right, you're
surprising that we're all revisiting it because Mr. Dieters made the recommendation. I started with that at the very beginning. One thing I just want to say, Ms. Underwood, in your respect to our chair, that in the event, so we go through, we say, hey, section 1, we've discussed it, it's closed. If there's ever any feedback that you get, I get, anyone else who sits up here on behalf of the citizens, do we want to utilize it as an exclamation point close or like a comma, semicolon close? Or is it like a hard close? Because, for example, Elijah's not here tonight. He may have something valuable to add next week or in the weeks that he's not here or when Siobhan's not here. So,
So I'm going to address that for you as well. So one of the things that I did make sure of is that we have ICRC recording these meetings. We didn't do that last time. I want everybody to be able to go back and have the opportunity to review the meeting at your leisure. And that way you can go back like, oh yeah, that reminds me. That way, not only can people, and you know, when they get off work or on a Saturday morning or whatever, when it's convenient for people to watch, I want them to be able to watch these meetings. And if they want to send feedback or, heck, even just show up and say, hey, I've got something to say, that is the option. So I believe that's how I address that. So what I would like to say is that we'll add the April meetings. If there's a meeting that you can't come to, that's fine. Just keep in mind that you can watch it on ICRC-TV, so that we can have a good discussion about these things that we need to discuss, because I do want to do that. I want to honor and respect everybody's time. It is 6:35. So we all agree we're going to meet every week in April, and if you can't be here, that's fine.
That's fine.
That's fine. That sounds good.
Okay. All right. So with that being said, it is 6:36, and I will now adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much for coming.